All right.
All right, welcome everyone. We're so excited to have you part of our leaders breakfast this morning since we needed to change the time. We're excited to have these amazing panelists with us today and learn a little bit more on growing our leaders. Be sure to send the invite to any leaders that you don't see that are not on currently. And a reminder to mute yourself if you are not asking a question. We will have people monitoring the chat. So if you have any questions, feel free to put your question in there. We have two ladies, Kelly and Andrea, monitoring that. All right. So to get started, I'm going to turn the time over to Aspen.
Hey friends, I'm so glad everyone's here on this crazy busy day. Does anybody else have like this like jittery vibe going for today? It feels almost like November 30th to me. Is anybody else getting like, it's a little crazy, but I'm excited you're here and crazy excited for our topic and also our panel. So we have 4 panelists today. We have Kathy Bandy, Rachele Pence, Steffie Malbrough, and Chelsea Otto. And as I pass to them, they're just going to give you a short intro as who they are and how they got where they are, and a couple of credentials. Beyond that, you guys, I think that building leaders is one of the best things we can do. So when we start, it's like we want to become a leader, right? And so once you hit that, there's always something else. It's like, okay, so what's next for me? And you learn really quickly that the coolest thing you can do is grab somebody's hand and bring them along. So these 4 amazing panelists are going to tell you some of the best ways you can do that, give you some really great ideas on how they're doing it. And I will say that these 4, they're not just going to give you ideas or come up with stuff out of their head. They're doing it. They're killing it. All of them have built numerous leaders. I would say collectively probably close to 100 leaders just this year that they've grown on their own. So they got the information that you need. So first, we have a couple different topics that I want to cover, but I think first and the most important thing that we can talk about, and we really talk about this as it ties into everything, is community and building a community. So I'm going to go to you first, Rachele, and I want you to share with us, what do you do to build community with people when they're not yet leaders, or how do you bring them in? How do you get started with them?
So one of our biggest things is that we have anybody that's an up and coming leader, we treat them like they're already a director. So starting as soon as they promote to a star consultant, we go ahead and we're like, okay, if you want to be a director, you need to act like a director. And when we say that, we mean being an admin to our big group page. We mean reaching out to people if they have a question, answering the question, inviting people, welcoming people, congratulating people, all of those type things. And then we even go a step further, and they're the ones that lead a lot of our trainings. So we do a Wednesday night training every single Wednesday, and it's an up and coming leader that does it. It's a star consultant every single Wednesday. And then they also come in and they also help do our all consultant Zooms too.
That's awesome. Okay, so I want to jump over really quick just to back on that, Kathy and I had talked about it's a great way to pull them in, but what are you going to do to build that trust between them? How do you encourage a leader or an up-and-coming leader without maybe stepping on their toes or discouraging? How do you be firm and say, look, this is on you, but here I am?
It's all about building that trusting relationship with them, letting them know that you're there to listen, but you're also there to help guide them. And you don't take excuses. I will bring them right back in if they say, well, I'm busy and I had this, and I'm like, well, you know that you don't listen to that from your team, so you can't say that to me. And so it's so important that they trust you and that you also can give them criticism and they can accept it too. And I think that that's how we have created a great community of leaders within my group, is we have that open dialogue, and I can be firm with them and I can say, hey, when we're having a coaching call or they're having an issue, we can look at the big picture, and they are open to what criticism I'm going to give them. And and instilling that belief in them too is very important. So those are some of the ways that I help them be confident, and that they can teach that to their up and coming leaders too.
Okay. I think that's good. I mean, and trust is so huge, because if you're going to say to somebody, look, this is on you, you have to have some sort of relationship with them, right? It can't be like the first time you pick up the phone.
No.
So I'm going to come to you next, Steffi, and I want to take a step back in that these are great ways to build with our upcoming leaders, but what if we look at our downline and say, okay, who is my next leader? What is the best way to recognize who your leaders are? Like, what are those behaviors when you're looking at your downline and you're, okay, obviously we all want to be superstar directors and paid as superstar directors. So how do we know who we're looking at?
I run reports constantly. And during the first week of the month, what I'm looking for is running a report and then recognizing those who are putting in $500. For me, it's by the 10th of every single month. So I'm looking every single day, but by the 10th is when I'm actually running the report and then also emailing every single person within my group who's done $500 in PRB by the 10th of the month, because those are my leaders. Those are the people who spent time front loading their calendar, kicked off week 1 with success, have in their bare bones minimum requirement to be paid leadership bonuses. And then I recognize that just through email, it's free, and just send them a recognition saying, I see you have $500 in PRV. If you're a leader, congratulations. If you are not a leader yet, this is step 1 of promoting up our compensation plan.
No, I think that's great, because we all know how exhausting it can be to convince someone what they need to do every single month. And so, Chelsea, I want to ask you, we had talked before about kind of how you maybe weed out the people that hit that 500, like the questions that you might ask, because everybody accidentally hits 500 every once in a while in the fall, or even now when things are crazy, and not everybody wants to be a leader. So what do you do to weed and to decide like who your focus is going to be on, so you don't waste any time?
So first off, my time is very valuable, and so is theirs. So I look at consistency. Someone could hit $500 this month, but then the next 2 months they could have barely 200. Those are the people that I'm not going to take seriously. And when I ask people, hey, do you want to be a leader? And they say, yeah, I say, okay, well, these are the steps that you need to do. So I basically challenge them to hit 500 minimum by the 15th. I know Steffi says by the 10th, I do by the 15th, but either day works. Have 500 by the 15th every single month for 6 months consistency. Why 6 months? Because when you hit director, you have 6 months to hit that title again. So basically I train their mind to automatically go, I need to hit director numbers for 6 months consistency, so I don't go back into DQ. That's kind of how I do it. And if they don't stay consistent, then I know they're not taking it seriously. Also, I can't be the one that's constantly pulling their own reports. They have to be the one that shows me that they want it, because I have my own business to run. I have other leaders I'm trying to pull up to be with me. I have our other leaders in our leadership who I'm helping as well. So if they want to take it seriously, if they want to be a leader, they have to show me in order for me to take time away from other people to work with them, if that answers your question.
It does, absolutely. And one of the things you said we were chatting before is the difference between an accidental and a sustainable leader. And I think that's pure gold when you're looking, because accidental leaders happen. And again, it's exhausting to get someone to do it over and over when you have to coach them through it. So as we went through our first round of questions with everyone, I didn't get an intro from you guys, mostly because I think we're all excited about sharing this topic. But so as I go back to you, let's learn just a tiny bit about you. I'm going to circle back, and I want to know a lot more about coaching. And so I'm going to get a little bit from each one of you about coaching, and maybe I'm seeing in the chat a little bit of maybe like nervous chatter, like, okay, I want to do coaching, but I don't know what to say, or like, how do you even start this? So I want to go back to, let's say, Rachel, let's go back to you and do us an intro real quick, and then tell us And one thing you guys are going to notice as I talk to each one of these, just like Steffi and Chelsea just said, like, well, I do the 10th, well, I do the 15th. We're not saying you have to do exactly what we do. We're saying do something, do some of these things, do what works for you. Just like we talk about every single week. You don't have to be any of these people, but if you're doing some of the things that they do, it works. So go ahead.
Okay, so I joined Scentsy in 2016, February of 2016. And honestly, I had kind of a slow start to building leaders. And I don't think it was from lack of effort, and I'm not perfect by any means, but it definitely was not from lack of effort. It was a lot of lack of not finding those people, because that's one thing as a newer director that was hard for me to learn. So I joined in February of 16, and I promoted to director in September of 16. And one of the hardest lessons for me to learn was that not everybody wanted this as much as I wanted. So my first 2.5 years, my first 2 years, 2.5 years, maybe 1.5 years, something like that, I didn't have any directors. It took me a while to find downline directors. And like I said, it wasn't from lack of effort, because I was earning annual mentor and I was earning top 100 and all these things because I was recruiting, but I wasn't finding people that wanted it the way that I wanted it. So that was one of the hardest lessons for me to learn personally. But since then, since last spring, so spring of 2019, we've promoted 28 directors. And 6 of those were frontline, and then the rest were downline. But we've really, really grown the last few months, and I really think it's because of that community we've created is one of the biggest things. And then in addition to that, it's coaching. So working with them one-on-one. And I did see, and I don't know if I'm supposed to answer questions in the comments or not, but this is one that I literally talked to my directors about the other day, and it goes back with coaching, is when I'm coaching, I'm focusing on my front line. I'm focusing on my front line, and then underneath, and excuse the paint, sorry, but underneath my front line, I'm focusing on my rock stars. And that's all that I'm really touching. I'm not doing coaching calls 3 generations deep and even 2 generations deep, because I don't have time. I have to focus on my front line and my directors. And that's pretty much it. When I say my front line though, I don't necessarily mean the people I've directly recruited. I mean people within my team that want the business, that want to have a successful business. And those are the people I work with. And when I tell my directors who you need to coach, we literally had this call last week, is you don't think of it as like going to a neighbor's house when you're thinking of a director's team. So the director's team, yeah, you guys are all one family, but I'm not going to go to my sister's house and discipline her kid. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go to my sister's house and I'm going to give her birthday presents, and I'm going to love on my niece, and I'm going to tell her how great she is and how cute she is and all these things, but I'm not going to discipline her. That's the mom's job. So that's one really easy way to think about it when you're thinking about who to coach, at least for me, is I'm going to coach my kids. I'm going to tell my kids, you need to get your crap together. Like you got to recruit, you got to get your PRV up, you've got to do this stuff if you have these big goals. But I'm not going to go deeper into my directors downline and frontline and all that to tell them those things. I'm going to send them happy mail. I'm going to love on them. I'm going to tell them you're doing a fantastic job, but I'm not going to discipline them. So that's one way that I think of it that really breaks it down super easy. Think of it what you would do for your niece and what you would do for your daughter.
I love that analogy, because it's really perfect. So I'm going to jump back to Chelsea, and Chelsea, share with us a little bit about, I know you're all about tough love, and I love that about you because that's my jam. So tell me, when it comes to coaching, I mean, a lot of times we're setting stuff up, we're reaching out, we're doing all the things, and it doesn't always work out. So tell me how you handle that. I mean, I know in one sense we can't boot everybody out because stuff happens, but on the other hand, like, the excuses are excuses. So tell us how you handle that and how you continue to build leaders even through saying that's enough.
Well, just some little facts. Because I know you want us to do like share like who we were too, like our little introduction. I've been with Scentsy since September 28th, 2012. I promoted to Superstar Director in 2016. And I was not ready for Superstar Director because the month before I hit Star Director. So I had a huge jump. I had to learn how to have leaders. And it was hard. It was messy. It was exciting. It was all of the emotions. So if you are a new director that has directors under you, it's okay for it to be messy. It's okay for it to be hard. It's okay to be overwhelmed. That's normal. I would probably question if somebody wasn't overwhelmed with having directors. But from 2018 to 2020, we had 9 directors in 2018, and 6 of those were my first gens. In 2019, we had 17 total leaders, 2 star directors, 15 directors, and 8 of those were my first gens. And then this is all from May of 2018, 19, and 20. And then last month, we have a total of 51 directors, or 51 total leaders, 43 directors, 7 star directors, and 1 SSD, and then myself. So I'm not saying what we're doing is perfect, because it's definitely not, but what we're doing together as a leadership is working. And how I identify and how I kind of, like you said, weed out people who want to work and people who say they want to work but don't. And I know Rachel said that she works with her front line, and that's exactly what I do. I work. It's like a chain of command. My husband's in the Marine Corps, so I kind of do that as well. I have myself first, always, my business, my personal business, my leaders, my front line, my team, my group, and that's it. So I work with my leaders, and then I work with my front line first or second after my leaders. And then I trickle down into my team, and I see that there are people on there that they don't want to step on toes. Listen, it does not matter. It does not matter. If you see somebody coming up in your team, not in your group, in your team, that is a rock star, you identify them. You let them know, hey, I see you killing it. One of my first gen directors is not my front line. She's a second gen to me. But because I identified her and I didn't step on toes. There is no stepping on toes in our group. That's the tone that we've set. And if people aren't being the sponsor that they should be, there is nothing to step on, honestly. So reach down. If you see somebody in your team killing it, let them know and work with them. And then as far as my directors and their teams, we do 2-on-1s, me, the director, and one of their downline. That's what we do, because we work as an entire community to get everybody up. It's not just me. I can't do this by myself. I'd go crazy if I tried to do this by myself. But it's me and my leaders all doing this together. We just finished up a back to the basics training that all of our leaders put together for our entire group. So there is no stepping on toes. There's not. It's just, you're just identifying, like Rachel said, you want to be their cheerleader. So there should not be any stepping on toes. If you want somebody to sponsor and lead well, then you need to work with your front line and encourage them, and then let them know, hey, I see that there's a leader coming up in your team. I'm going to identify them. And there's nothing wrong with that. There should never be anything wrong with identifying somebody that's 2, 3, 4 down from you in your team. Because at the end of the day, we just want everybody to rise together. And if you instill that in your team and in your group, there's no stepping on toes. I hope that
absolutely. No, I think that's great. I'm going to jump back to Kathy, because as you're saying that, I know we can identify in hyper growth, what you mentioned earlier about things getting messy, like things feel a little messy right now with so many new leaders, and some of you are new leaders and maybe are seeing leaders coming really quick, and you're like, okay, whoa, but don't take a step back, just jump in and grab hands. So Kathy, I want to go to you, because something Chelsea had said about maybe a second generation being a first generation leader, I know happened just recently with you. And I want to know, so we've talked about how to identify, we've talked about building trust, we've talked about coaching. I want to talk a little bit about community. So I'm going to go Kathy, and then I'm going to go back to Steffi. Tell me a little bit about the community that you're building and the things that you're doing after you recognize maybe a second gen or somebody else that's a leader. What are you doing with these people all together so that maybe it's not all on you?
Well, I have a group, it's called Leader Circle. And when I identify up and coming leaders, I set up a coaching call with them right away. And I find out short-term goals and long-term goals. And I tell them about the Leader Circle and invite them in. It is a close-knit small group of leaders where we all collaborate. I have my directors in there. I also have lead and up in there. And it has created this cohesiveness where we can all talk and identify leaders within our own teams and work on different ideas and ways to help bring everybody along with us. And I think that it's changed my business since I started that group. When I came back from Star Director Summit approach last spring. And so I've been with Cincy I just celebrated 10 years in December. And I was one of those consultants that I said I was going to be a Star Director for life, and it was okay. I felt like I did not know how to grow leaders. And that event, and I'm here to tell you guys, go to events, change my business. And I got back and I got to work and I promoted to Superstar Director that October. And it has just continued to increase because of that circle and identifying the leaders and working together. So if I see someone in their team that they may not have identified yet, I'll say, hey, what about so-and-so? And we'll get on the phone and talk about them. And if it's one of my directors, I'll say, set up a coaching call. And I'll even do coaching calls with that person if they want me to as well. Because I feel like there is never a stopping point. There's always something that you can give all the way down in your whole group, and I give to everybody. And my leaders know that too. So I'm here to help and guide them to do the same. And that has what has changed my whole group, the whole culture. For me, I spent many, many years kind of pouring into the wrong people who their actions didn't match what they were telling me that they wanted to achieve. And so I made those changes with the coaching that I was doing, where if you tell me this is your goal and these are the actions that we put to it and you're not showing me that, then I move on because I don't have time to waste. And so that has helped too with weeding out those that really want more out of their business. And one of my first gen directors is a second downline to me, and she passed her sponsor. And so that's where the important thing is, to identify those rock stars and work with them, because there are a lot of people who recruit rock stars and they don't do anything else with them. And you don't want those people just to be out there without having that guidance. If they are hitting shooting star and they're hitting sensational star, they're having 500 PRV in the first 7 days, 10 days, they are growing, they are worthy of your time. And you want to reach down, grab their hand and bring them along with you.
Absolutely. I love that, Kathy. Thank you. So one other thing I know we talk about, and you've heard everyone say, like, here's what I'm doing with my up and coming leaders. Here's what I'm doing with my group stuff. I'm going to go to you next, Steffi. We talk about people and seeing people in our downline who we can tell they want to be a part of something bigger. We can tell sometimes from the beginning, and sometimes it takes a while, but they want to be, we talked about earlier, they want to sit at the big kid table, right? And you can see that in some people, that they want to be a part of those things. So that's what I wanted you to share with us. The things that you're doing with your group that are that quote unquote big kid table, like Kathy mentioned, her leadership circle. There's so many different ways we can do that. And I want you to share what you do.
Sure. So a couple of things that we do. One, we have a Facebook group for what we, behind the scenes, I call emerging leaders. It's titled something like our group name and then future directors. But what it is it's star consultants and above. And about every 6 months to maybe a year, we'll set parameters so we can kind of like weed it out too. Because some people are accidental star consultants, or we're hot to trot when they hit it for a couple of months and then something happens, a divorce, a kid, a new job, something. And so now all of a sudden leadership isn't a priority for them. So sometimes along the way we'll set parameters, but essentially this emerging leaders group is huge because that's people who we know where to dial in and focus in and give them different training than our all consultant group page. And then the other thing that we do that I don't see a lot of other leaders doing, so maybe this is unique to us, but has been a game changer for years and years, and that's a month-end Zoom. So anytime after 9-10 Eastern Standard Time, we hop on Zoom, and that's for our emerging leaders. Those star consultants and above are invited, and we will sit there. I will sit there. Andy Teeter, a superstar director underneath me, my frontline directors, we will sit on Zoom until every single promotion has hit for directors and above. I know how that feels to have somebody with you to celebrate. And if your promotion is going to happen at 10, 11, 12 o'clock in the morning, more than likely your husband has gone to bed, the kids are in bed, your best friend isn't over. And so that has really built community and team culture within our organization. Is if I see you pushing hard, not telling me, well, if it happens, it happens. If it's my time, it's my time to promote. If you are showing me that you are submitting orders, crunching it, your iPhone roll is full of, screenshots from the calculator to see how much, TWV you have left to go, I will sit on Zoom with you until the wee hours of the morning, waiting to celebrate your promotion when it hits. And that's something that we do every single month, whether it's a Monday night or a Sunday night. I think the only time we ever don't hop on is New Year's, because who's sitting around? We've already wrapped up the month a week prior to that with the shipping cutoff. But we've been doing that since, well, I'm a military spouse, so we've been doing that since I lived in Juneau, Alaska. And so that was probably at least 7 years ago. And that's something that we've been consistently doing. I wasn't even a superstar director at the time. I was a director. I knew what it was like to promote alone. And then I promoted to star director alone, and then for superstar director. So I want that community, and the fact that we live all over the country, all over the globe, doesn't mean anything because we've got Zoom now.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I think, like I said earlier, just like we talk about every single week, it's community. When we're talking about sponsoring, it's community. When we're talking about parties, it's community. We're talking about recruiting or bringing people in or bringing people up or building leaders. It's always about community. And I think that's where Scentsy is different than any other direct sales business, because we are community. So, and Facebook group hangs have made it really easy for us to hang out anytime. I know a lot of times I'll jump on and just like, I'm working, who's working with me? And that's a great way to see like who's up, who's watching numbers, who cares? If you're having a hard time identifying, we have to watch and we have to look. And that's something you guys probably seen from all the leaders today. Unfortunately, our time is coming to an end. And so, we could go on for hours because these leaders are obviously amazing and have so many really cool things for us to, soak up. And I don't know about you, but I learned a ton. Let's go. We had Kelly and Andrea monitoring our chat. Are there any questions that didn't get answered?
No, the girls have been good about monitoring the chat, and they've answered the ones that have come along. So I believe we've got it all covered.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. Our panel was amazing. Kathy, Rachel, Steffi, and Chelsea, you guys are rock stars, obviously. And we have so much to learn from you, all of us. So reach out, grow. You guys, these leaders share things constantly, not just with their teams, but with everyone else. And as a leader, to grow leaders, you have to continue to be a part of things. You have to continue to not just look at your team, but look at others, and don't get overwhelmed with all of the stuff you learned today, but take the things that you can and start doing those things. So thank you, panelists, for everything. Thank you, Kelly and Andrea and Shelly for the intro, Karen for always recording and getting things started. If your leaders, if you have directors in your downline are not on these Summer Sizzle calls, you guys, every Monday, be sure they're on, because that's one of the other things as a leader you can do for your leaders already, is get them involved. And obviously they need to hear this just as much as you did. So thank you guys so much for getting on. I was going to say have an incredible day, but I know that you will. Today is going to be crazy amazing. Soak it in, stay calm, and I can't wait. We're going to have a bunch of new leaders by the end of today again, I would assume. So everyone have a great day.